StarFm. This is Late Night Politics on StarFM, taking an in-depth look at the Zimbabwean political scene.
It's a Monday and it's Late Night Politics. My name is George Msumba. I hope I find you well and I hope Easter has been good to you. We continue to focus on the youth demographic and the impact that it will make on the voting landscape in the 2018 harmonized elections. Now tonight our topic is, what do youth stand for and how will they vote? To help us in our discussion, I have in the studio Zimbabwe National Students Union Secretary for Education and Academic Research Persona is Innocent Zobwo. He is from ZINASU, that's the Zimbabwe National Students Union, and he's the Secretary for Education and Academic Research. Welcome to the program, Persona.
Thank you.
Also in the studio is Zimbabwe Congress of Students Union, ZICOSU, Commander Student Force, Comrade Paul Mavima. Welcome to the program.
Revolutionary greetings, Kada. Thank you for welcoming me.
Gentlemen, you are students and you are obviously watching the political landscape in your own various portfolios. You have followed student politics, but this is also national politics because you make up the demographic with the most registered voters. So your say will be very important in the 2018 elections. But before we go into that, let me start with a brief background. Who are you, Persona Zobwo?
My name is Persona Zobwo. I'm the ZINASU Secretary for Education and Research. I am a student at Second Teachers College doing my diploma in education. And I am doing various operations in ZINASU that include making the youth register in the upcoming for them to vote in the upcoming elections.
How has been the response? Have the youths whom you approached, have they shown interest in participating in this important event?
Yeah, most youth are showing great zeal, and the response has been overwhelming because we have been moving across the tertiary institutions, which include NASTI, second teachers, the UZ, and we have been registering the youth, and their response has been overwhelming. Even the first years are even interested, and I think it has been overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. We will talk later on about the aspirations of the youth, but for now let's get to know a little bit about our other guest, Paul Mavima. A brief introduction.
Okay, thank you. My name is Paul Mavima. As you mentioned, I'm the Commander Students Force from the ZICOSU. We're standing for Zimbabwe Congress of Students Union. I'm a student at the University of Zimbabwe. I'm doing my postgrad diploma in media studies and journalism. Thank you.
So you are familiar with media and how it is looking at the youth. There's so much interest in how the youth will vote. Previously, they've stayed away from voting. But give us a bit of background. What is ZINASU all about, and why is it different from ZICOSU? I'll start with you, Persona.
Okay, ZINASU is a sovereign organization that represents the students at national level at tertiary institutions. It was formed in 1997, and it actually has a vision to see the youth and the student having the academic freedoms and rights to actually tackle the situations that youth encounter in their struggles against the status quo and the system that exists for now, that is very unfriendly to the students. So our vision is to see a Zimbabwe where youths and students will contribute to the brain capacity of the country and not be alienated from the think tanks. So we actually want to create a democratic Zimbabwe in which the youth and the student are adequately represented.
Okay. What is your relationship with the government in power as ZINASU?
The government in power, we respect we respect it, and we actually respect the bureaucracy that is there, that we as an organization, we are operating under the government that is there. But we have got certain things that we agree with them. We have got certain things that we don't agree with them in terms of our principles and our values as the Zimbabwe Students' National Union.
And your relationship with the main opposition party, MDCT, through now it will be working with as an MDC alliance?
Our relationship with the MDC alliance, we actually see it as an institution that has some of its policies resounding and reverberating with what we, the youths of Zimbabwe, want. But however, we desist by all means necessary to actually join hands with political parties. We stand as a student organization that represents the rights of students. So any party that is that actually is has an interest in the youths, we actually communicate with it with what we want. Even with the ED government, we have communicated where we want hash attachment fees must fall, and finally hash fees must fall. And with this NC government, if it gets into power, we even communicate with it about what we want as the students. So I think our relationship is about the policies that affect students.
But you are closer to the MDCT than to the ZANU-PF government?
I would not want to say we are closer to any political party. We are just an independent apolitical institution that deals with political matters. So we have to engage the certain stakeholders in that political field. So we engage with both, but we actually, if a certain opposition party or if ZANU-PF actually announces something that is within the confines of our interests, if they actually resonate with our interests, we can actually hail them. But we are hail with anyone, we as the students interested at heart, and who will actually spearhead for the student cause.
Let me turn to ZICOSU. What do you stand for in terms of the ZINASU? Pesanai seems to be saying they are apolitical. Do you believe that they are apolitical? What does ZICOSU stand for?
Well, ZICOSU, it's a students' union that was formed in 2002. I think that's 5 years after the formation of ZINASU. Apparently, so many things have been said about ZINASU, and they want to paint this picture of being apolitical. But honestly speaking, I just as well outside waiting for you to come. The brother of mine sitting next to me was bragging that they actually helped form the MDCT, and they have the umbilical cord tied to the harvest house. But now in front of the microphone, obviously, is trying to paint a picture that they are political. Different from ZINASU. We don't hide our political affiliation. We affiliate to the ZANU-PF, that's Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front. We work with the government of the day, and we believe that going forward, we're going to continue working with the government of the day, because I don't foresee anything that's going to happen or that will make ZANU-PF lose elections in the near future. So ZICOSU was formed mainly to push the agenda of students forward, to push the agenda of progressive students forward, mainly. Why? Because we saw that it was seen maybe back then with other comrades like Yurek and Lovu, other comrades like Tafazo Mgwadi, other comrades like Tondera Chidao, who came together and formed ZICOSU on the basis that ZINASU had lost its relevance, or ZINASU had lost its ethos of moving the students' agenda forward. Why do I say so? ZINASU was now putting the interests of NGOs, or brown envelopes, we call them, ahead of the interests of the students. We see people who took pride in destroying institutions. We see people who took pride in urinating in DH facilities and all that. So when such was seen that the students' movement was no longer progressive, but rather was actually counter-revolutionary to the ethos of the national agenda, that's how ZICOSU came up. ZICOSU came up as a product of seeing how much ZINASU had lost track of itself. Because in 1997, the students converged at the University of Zimbabwe in NOT 400 to be particular, and we came up with this resolution that we want to form a national students' union that's going to be apolitical. But in 1999, this resolution was then betrayed when ZINASU came up with the agenda of forming a political party that's going to be counter-revolutionary to the revolutionary ethos of the nationalistic agenda that we've been pushing since 1980. In ZICOSU, I would like to take you back to where student activism actually started. Student activism was a product of comrades like Edgar Mbwembwe, comrades like Arthur Mtambara. These are comrades who pushed sincere students' agendas that were apolitical. But now we see the formation of ZINASU coming in. ZINASU was now a pressure group that was used by the opposition to move an opposition agenda forward. So that's the main reason why ZICOSU was formed. ZICOSU was formed to actually take students back to the days of Arthur Mtambara, to take students back to the days of Edgar Mbwembwe, to take students back to the days of other fallen heroes that participated in student activism in the 1990s. So ZICOSU it's a reincarnation of us connecting together with other student leaders who include Arthur Mtambara and Edgar Mbwembwe, obviously. So that's why ZICOSU was formed as a mechanism for us to take back student activism to its glory days in the 1980s. Thank you.
You talked about ZINASU being a proxy of the opposition and receiving brown envelopes to push the agenda of the opposition. But some will say today that even ZICOSU, the gatherings that you have, people are coming because they want some per diem or some money, transport money, or some money for food. How do you respond to that criticism?
Such criticism is unfounded. Such criticism is counter-revolutionary. Such criticism does not hold water on any day. The thing is, we are being misquoted in saying that we are well financed, but it's actually in the contrary. Because if you look at ZINASU itself, they've got an 80,000 grant which comes annually from SAI, 40,000 grant that comes from Czech Republic embassy, and 80,000 grant that comes from the Turkish embassy as well. So if you actually want to go down as to who's well funded or who's better well funded between the two of us, who's most likely to buy students through the use of brown envelopes is ZINASU. Because brown envelopes have never been associated with ZICOSU. We don't believe, as a revolutionary students' union, we don't believe in brown envelopes. We believe in supreme sacrifice. Sacrifice that comes with you being able to save the students with or without them, without financial benefit that's coming to you. So such criticism, it's rather ZINASU propaganda to classify us as a union that's mainly built around giving financial dividends to students for them to associate themselves with us.
For those who have just joined us, the program is Late Night Politics, and tonight our topic is what do youth stand for and how will they vote? And we are specifically looking at ZINASU and ZICOSU. These are students' bodies, student union bodies which represent students in various higher and tertiary education institutions. And in the studio I have with me Zimbabwe Congress of Students Union Commander Student Force, Comrade Paul Mavima, as well as ZINASU Secretary for Education and Academic Research, Pesanai Innocent Zobo. Pesanai, hanzi manga maraska ideology, manga makuda kurya nema NGO, mama kupusha agenda yema opposition party, ndosaka pakazobva ava vezikosu achita kutanga chedu. Unoti chiinazvo zviri kutaurwa na Mavima izvi?
I dismiss those allegations as unfounded and they lack empirical support base. I think the formation of the Zimbabwe National Students Union was a reaction to the corrupt activities of the ZANU-PF government and how they were managing the students' affairs within that period. And comrades like Lenmo Judah Jongwe came up and formed the Zimbabwe National Students Union in 1997. And after forming that, they created a constitution that made comrades in ZINASU to serve for only 2 years. And after leaving their office in 1999, they went and joined the MDC that was being formed in that year. And after being formed, ZINASU, because it had ideological an ideological base that has democracy, that has academic freedoms and liberties. The ZANU-PF government made it mandatory to form another students' union to counter the good works of the ZINASU comrades that was being spearheaded at that time. And I think during that time, the early 2000s, ZINASU was making great progress in alleviating the students from oppression by the government. And ZICOSU, having seen that the students were actually being liberated philosophically and ideologically, and being shown the way by comrades in ZINASU who were saying, no, what ZANU-PF is doing right now is wrong. And as any other culture, the student body is the intellectual the intellectual base of every society, of every community. So ZINASU was doing that very same patriotic deed to the student base across the entire Zimbabwe. So the government in 2002 then formed ZICOSU to counter ZINASU. There was nothing like the ZINASU just merely urinating in in dining halls or whatever, but it was a response to a very pathetic situation that had developed. We were in a decadent age in that time. The year 2000, that's when the economic decadence started, and ZINASU was responding to that. ZINASU was saying, no, students should be given enough grants that can sustain them. The financial climate that was there at that time did not sustain the students. So students were responding to genuine predicaments that were actually pervading in our society. So ZICOSU was formed to neutralize the democratic principles and the democratic deeds that ZINASU was doing at that time. And when ZICOSU was formed, what did it do? The government thought that because ZICOSU had no ideology, it had an ideological hunger. The government then said we can give the ZICOSU grants, even from ZIMDEF. They are given grants, and we can actually buy out the students who are wallowing in poverty. The same government, it is the same government that created that poverty, and they actually use that poverty to bring in ZICOSU to affiliate to ZANU-PF. And this comrade has said that ZINASU is affiliated to the MDC, and he said he is not denying that they are affiliated to the ZICOSU is affiliated to ZANU-PF. I vehemently deny that ZINASU is affiliated to the MDC, because comrades, by virtue that comrades that were in ZINASU went to the MDC, doesn't make ZINASU an affiliate of the MDC. If the ideological ethos resonate within the two institutions, it doesn't mean that they actually are in sync. But what we are saying right now, I can give an example. Right now, Joyce Mjuru was chucked out of ZANU-PF, and she has formed a political party. Does that mean she is affiliated to ZANU-PF? I don't think so. And so we have to, we can continue debating about this, but the truth is clear. ZICOSU is living on handouts from the government, and it is buying out students. And right now they've launched campaigns like ED as my vote, whatever, meaning that they are affiliated to the government, and they are fighting for the government rather than the student. He came here to defend the government, not to defend the student, not to defend the youth. So I think my fellow comrades with his institution, they are actually bearing the youth vision. What we see in the near future, what we see, I think they are bled with a certain kind of myopia that is enabling them to sacrifice the youth vision, the student vision on the altar of political expedience.
Okay, I'll come back to you in a little while, but I want you to respond in brief because he has said quite a mouthful. Pesana has said quite a mouthful condemning the actions of ZICOSU. Just in brief to respond, then we move on to the next point.
Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond to Comrade Pesanai. I think what Comrade Pesanai is misconceptuating between ZICOSU and ZINASU is very simple. ZICOSU was formed not necessarily to counter ZINASU. Really, ZINASU cannot be that special that a whole government will form an institution to counter it. Honestly. So going forward, I think what we need to come up with, what they saw as important was them to come up with a progressive students' union that was going to be pro the students' agenda, like I mentioned before. Was ZINASU had lost its way. We both, I think myself and Comrade Pesana can accept that what had happened in the late 90s going to the early 2000s was nothing close to progressiveness really in our institutions. We saw the closure of National University of Science and Technology, NUST. We saw the closure of the University of Zimbabwe. We saw the closure of MSU, that was in 1998. We saw the closure of Shinoe University of Technology in 1999. We saw the closure of Harare Polytechnic in 2000 rather. So what we're saying is students, they actually saw that no, they'd been sold a dummy in what sense? We're saying these are people who were claiming that they were pushing the students' agenda, but going forward you'd notice what? When Lemo Judah Jongwe came out of ZINASU, he was elected as the spokesperson of the MDC at the inaugural Congress in 1999. When Nelson Chamisa came out of ZINASU, he was elected the youth chairman of the MDC in 1999. So you really cannot separate the two. Unlike ZINASU, like I said before, we're not going to deny our affiliations. ZINASU should not go out and deny their affiliation to the MDC. Right now, what we have in institutions are people who are coercing students using any means necessary for them to go out and vote for the MDC alliance. Why? Because when the Bliss BVR registration process was going on, they were busy engaged in factional fights. We saw Coupe being bashed at a funeral, and the least places you'd expect that. We saw Muzuri being barred from entering Harvest House. We saw Douglas Monzora being booed by youths who had been hired by certain elements within the MDC. So when some of us were fixed in the agenda of having youths and students in particular to register to vote, certain people participating in factional fights, then they want to come here and say that ZICOSU is being funded. ZICOSU is being given grants from the government. Which grants really? And also making a comment on the ZIMDEF issue. ZIMDEF is under investigation right now, and the culprits are the ZIMDEF director has been suspended. The deputy director has been suspended. The secretary to the board has been suspended as well. It goes in line with the firing of Jonathan Moore and Gandawa, respectively being the minister and deputy minister of higher and tertiary education. Not anywhere have I seen any name of any ZICOSU comrade appearing amongst the list of those who have been charged with corruption or those who have been charged with receiving funds from ZIMDEF. So those claims, they become unfound and they don't hold water really. Why? Because we're seeing people who are pushing propaganda. We're seeing people who are continuously pushing the agenda of selling the students with a dummy, whereby they say students will represent you because ZICOSU is affiliated to ZANU-PF. Really, it doesn't hold water in the intellectual community. Evidence to that is we walloped ZINASU at the University of Zimbabwe, we walloped ZINASU at NUST, we walloped ZINASU at MSU, we walloped ZINASU at Harare Polytechnic, we walloped ZINASU even at his institution. He can testify that the SRC president is more inclined to ZICOSU more than ZINASU, yet he is coming from there. Then we walloped ZINASU when we were at Bindura State University, like all the seats they belong to ZICOSU. So who really is not pushing the students' agenda when the representative council boards that have been elected by students are filled with comrades who affiliate themselves to ZICOSU? So then it becomes a fight of perception really, or it's naivety from my comrade dear Pesana who would like to say that they have a monopoly over the students' community, claiming that
in terms of membership, Mavima, how many students nationally belong to ZICOSU? And how many belong to ZINASU?
Given the last database that we took, we had registered about 56,000. students across all the 43 institutions in
These
Zimbabwe.
are ZICOSU members.
These are ZICOSU members, yes. Bona fide ZICOSU members. Then with ZINASU, I would want, I cannot comment on ZINASU.
I will ask that one too. Let's Pesanai, how many members do you have nationally?
We've got over 8,000 students.
On your books?
Yes.
So ZINASU has more members than ZICOSU?
ZINASU is the genuine student representative institution. And coming back to what you said, you have walloped ZINASU at UZ, you have walloped. It all goes back to the grants. You are selling a dummy to the students. You are misusing, or you are in the ZANO sense. We can say that you are using, but in our own democratic sense, we are saying you are misusing students' money from the government to buy students out so that they can come to you. For example, at my institution, second teachers, we did not hold an election, but they were appointed by Ephraim Tubuki. We did not have any right. We are looking at this. We are saying that the vice chancellors, the principals at teachers' colleges, the principals at polytechnics, they are all appointees of the government, and they will never try to risk their positions by actually going against the ZANU-PF government. As I have said, that ZICOSU was formed to counter.
But the administration, does it interfere with the election of student leaders?
Yes, it interfered at second teachers.
How do they do that?
But you just said there was no election in second teachers. Then you're now saying the administration interfered in an election.
No, I'm not.
Self-contradiction right there.
I didn't say that they interfered in an election. I said they interfered to our point. They didn't hold an election. That's the interference. Can't you understand, comrade?
Are you also in the leadership at SECI?
Yes, I was the former Secretary General of Second Teachers College. I was actually elected in 2015. So when they actually saw that I was resilient, they actually said no, they shouldn't go into an election because they haven't paid up their fees, of which we know that the students in Zimbabwe are struggling. We have been paying attachment fees. When I was in TP, I was paying attachment fees, and I was not able to actually satiate my debt. So I came back to college with a debt, and they said you cannot contest into an election because you have not paid up your fees. Yet the government is selling the people a dummy, saying that they have released a 1 billion grant, which the principals and the heads of the tertiary institutions will be actually denying. So we are saying that there is no fair ground between ZINASU and ZICOSU. Even in other institutions, ZICOSU is bailed out by the institution. They are given buses. Even when they were holding their ideological ideological squares, use it. They were actually bailed out by the institutions. They were given out buses. They were given out everything. But ZINASU, we don't have all that kind of thing. We actually genuinely represent the students, though we operate from a very small amount, trying to actually help out the students who are being abused by ZICOSU and ZANU-PF.
Okay, Mafima, come in there as we wind up this point in terms of membership and election to the body which represents the students, because we want to move on to national politics now. Just to wind up in brief.
Okay, thank you. I really don't have much to say, because for the greater part of his presentation, he was making use of assumptions rather than facts. It's not factual that students are being abused by ZICOSU and ZANU-PF. Rather, he actually becomes a culprit, which we can actually sue for dragging the name of the union into disrepute. You can't claim that students are being abused by ZICOSU. You can't claim that ZICOSU is being given handouts by the institutions. But the problem is this. You see, what we see, institutions, they don't deal with ZICOSU directly. Institutions, they deal with the SRC, the incumbent SRC. So what these guys are failing to admit is that the incumbent SRC, all of them, they're affiliated to ZICOSU. So honestly speaking, if an SRC member comes up with an initiative of taking 60 students to a certain institution so that they can cross-pollinate ideas, I don't see the problem there. Why? Because SRC is the mandated students body within the institution that's supposed to be representing the students. So what we saw was not a gathering ordering of ZICOSU going straight into institutions claiming that we should be buses should be released for the Chitebo School of Ideology. No, it was actually the duty of the SRC to come up with such an initiative, and SRC actually came up with such initiatives that moved the revolution forward. And really, we cannot really stop the revolution because someone thinks that we're being handed out grants from government, or we're being handed out grants from the government of the day. The revolution certainly has to continue. In this Moy Comrade Moy, it's either you ship in or you ship out with the revolution. We will not entertain. We're not going to to take the back seat because ZINASU certainly thinks that we're getting grants from the government. It will not deter us from us pushing the revolutionary agenda forward.
The program is Late Night Politics. We are discussing student politics. What do youth stand for and how will they vote? And in the studio, I have with me ZINASU Secretary for Education and Academic Research, Pesanai Innocent Zobo. Also in the studio, Zimbabwe Congress of Students Union, ZICOSU Commander Student Force, Comrade Paul Mavima. And we have been looking at the background of the two organizations. It seems ZINASU is more leaning towards the opposition, while ZICOSU says they are saying that they one and together with ZANU PF. And as we looked at our demographics, we are looking at that there's youths in Zimbabwe will have a bearing on the voting in Zimbabwe. Let's look at the national politics now, gentlemen. How are you reading the landscape now? You are a youth, you belong to ZINASU. How are you seeing it playing out in the 2018 elections as the youth? Especially looking at it from the perspective of ZINASU.
Okay, from my own perspective and as a comrade in ZINASU, I think the youth have got a great bearing on the politics, political terrain of Zimbabwe. We are saying that according to demography, the youth actually are up to 52% of the people that vote. So I think they are the game changers, because if all the youth can come out in their numbers and vote, they can actually elect a leader of their choice. And I think, and this time around, as compared to 2013, the youth are actually zealous about having their own share in politics. But as has been reported by ZEC, that about 60% of the youth have already registered. But the question now comes: where do the youth stand in the political terrain, in the political world? The youth are actually being used by certain political parties. As a comrade in ZINASU and in my own personal capacity, I can actually see that political parties are not doing justice to the youth. They are just rallying the youth to follow their own agendas. Yet the youth in the 21st century should be his or her own driver towards a destination that they want. They do not have to borrow a certain mindset, a 1980s mindset, a 1960s mindset, to actually realize a vision that they see in the 21st century. So I think the youth now should actually get into politics, and a youth quota should be introduced by all political parties. I have read about it. ZAPU was talking about introducing a youth quota, but I think it should become basic that every political party should have a youth quota, because youth, by their very nature, they do not have very much resources in terms of campaigning, in terms of what. So if you just say that they should campaign for a certain position in the primaries or in the national election, without those resources, yes, of course, they will be bashed. So I think a national youth quota, maybe in parliament, in senate, should be introduced. I have been reading about Ngosana Moyo. He was talking about that if he gets into government, you actually have MPs and deputize them by youth. But I actually disagree with them, because the youth should become the ministers and not to be to deputize on something. So I think for all political parties, they should introduce a youth quota so that youth can actually, in their ample numbers, participate in politics, not to be led, not to be used, to be rallied in politics. That's what I think.
Who is your favorite candidate from the ones who are there, the presidential candidates?
Actually, my candidate, I've been, on a personal level, I do support Nelson Chamisa in terms of his age. He's closer to the youth. The Constitution of Zimbabwe and the National Youth Charter says that the youth range from 15 to 35 years, and he's the only candidate there who is closer to the youth, so he can identify with our predicaments, with our with the social rot that the youth find themselves in. So, and his policies actually resonate with the youth in terms of employment, in terms of in terms of everything, in terms of his domestic policy. Actually, help us create the Zimbabwe that we want in terms of developing infrastructure and all those kind of projects. Yeah.
How would you react to criticism around the way he rose to power, that he could have stepped over the constitution of the MDCT and there was violence around the whole process? How do you react to such criticism against Nelson Chamisa?
I do actually say that such criticism is unfounded and lacks the empirical base. The MDC constitution actually says that the National Council is the highest decision-making body in the event that there is no Congress. So actually, the National Council actually convened and talked about this. It's not Nelson Chamisa who just said that I'm now the acting president, or I'm now the president of.
But he chaired the National Council meeting. He chaired the National Council meeting.
No, let me finish. All of them in all provinces, and they voted for Nelson Chamisa. If they didn't want, they were not forced. This was not a military coup. It's different from
They voted on the basis that
the 15 November military coup, whereby people were beaten, people were actually, ostracized in a certain manner. It's actually different. There were no guns here. There was nothing. It was a democratic and free will of the people in the National Council who would decide who the leader they wanted to lead. And Nelson Chamisa has been popular among the youth, has been popular among the elderly because of his noble ideas that will actually create a new Zimbabwe in which students and youth will actually have their own share and input into the intellectual fiscus.
Okay, before I come to Mavima, just one last question. Someone will probably say that because he chaired the same National Council meeting which eventually elevated him at Harvest House, which was a no-go area for Kupe, therefore, or even Mdzuru, or even some members of the National Council who might not have felt like voting against him or elevating him, they might have, because Harvest House zvechokwadi kwaityisa nguva idzodzo, even as journalists taitotyawo kupinda ikoko nenyaya yeVanguard. How do you react to that criticism yakuti it was not fair for the other candidates who might have wanted kuti vaite uma president?
I basically think that those sentiments are actually bigoted and unsubstantiated, because of course there might have been inconsistencies, because the MDC was in a crisis, that crisis. They would have actually been some misunderstandings here and there, but I've never heard that Mdzuri was actually not allowed to go into harvest house or whatever. But what I know is that Kupe had actually disagreed with Morgan Tsvangirai when we were still alive, and he had actually ditched Morgan Tsvangirai, and she did not attend about the MDC alliance political meetings for about eight months. So we cannot say that NC or Nelson Chamisa made Harvest House a no-go area for Kupe, but Kupe had actually desisted from going there because she didn't agree with the MDC alliance. She had termed it that the MDC had actually taken in briefcase parties, but for the vision of Morgan Tsvangirai, he wanted to see an opposition that is stronger, that converges and creates something that is much stronger to challenge the moribund ZANU-PF rule. So I think Kupe had actually alienated herself.
Okay, Mavima, you want to come in now, your reading of the political landscape as it is and how it will pan out as the youth?
Okay, thank you. I think before I come in, my comrade should adopt a bullet train speed when articulating issues. I think he's been speaking for the past 15 minutes. I'm just seated here. I'm thinking, really, is he the same person who's endorsing a candidate who's so fond of bullet trains and airports at village level? Okay, coming in on that issue, I think the youths, they're going to decide mainly. Why? Because given the statistics that have been released by ZEC, statistics that have been released by the Mother Election Board, which runs the Zimbabwe election. But also, I don't think youths are going to be game changers, because there's no game that's going to be changed. What we're going to vote for is the youth, its continuity. What we're going to vote for as the youth, its economic development. What we're going to vote for as the youth is international re-engagement that has been evident through the leadership of Comrade Idim Mnangagwa thus far. So what we want to see is I think as the youth, it goes beyond just us voting certain candidates into power. We want to see who really, when it comes to the push and shove of pushing the Zimbabwean economy forward, who really is well equipped and who really understands the journey that we've traveled thus far from 1980 up until now, who really has the right answers to the Zimbabwean economy. So if you look at that, then we're going to say that, only one person, or the answer will only incline towards one presidential candidate, who's President Emmerson Mnangagwa, for the simple reason that what we have seen under his leadership in 3 months, it's international re-engagement that's above excellence. We have seen, we are probably going to be rejoining the Commonwealth soon. We have seen the EU warming up to Zimbabwe for the first time probably in 20 years. We have seen the British tourists actually touring our tourist destinations, including Vic Falls, Kariba, and all that. We have seen him commission one of the biggest energy projects in Africa. That's the Kariba energy project that he commissioned just last week. We have seen him, take up the infrastructure development issue going forward, whereby we have seen the resurfacing of Harare CBD roads. We have seen the increase really in investor confidence within the Zimbabwean issue. So the youths, like I said before, it's not just about us voting, but it's about who are we voting for? Who really are we going to be safe around if we cast our trust in that candidate? Because honestly, we're not just going to give votes on a silver platter for the mere reason that someone is young. Because if we set up such a precedent, in 2023 we're going to probably have some girls who are going to be asking for votes for the mere reason that they're virgins, and we can't allow that. So leadership, it has to be based on capability, it has to be based on capacity, it has to be based on experience, it has to be based on your ability to re-engage with the international community. Why? Because we have seen that we are now living in a global village, a village whereby we're saying everything else in the world goes along, and we have to be in sync with the world trending politics of the day. So what we're seeing is, when ED is actually pushing an agenda of re-engagement, Nelson Chamisa and co, they are pushing an agenda of de-engagement from the international community, if there's a word in the dictionary. Why do I say so? We have an issue of Tendai Biti posting that just for the mere reason that the British government had recognized the government of Idim Mnangagwa, Tendai Biti slammed the British government for that. Why? Because they say that with the British government in endorsing a government which they are not a part of. It means it's a reduction in funding for them, it's a reduction in confidence for them, it's a reduction also in confidence of them within the Zimbabwean populace as well. So going forward, the youth should give their vote to someone who has shown the right signs. Because hate it or love it, I'm sure the three of us in here can all admit that whoever is going to take over after the July elections is going to have an easier task of pushing the agenda of Zimbabwe forward. Why? Because of the simple really ways that ED has managed the economy thus from 24th of November up until now.
Mavima, one criticism is that ED has been part of government for the past 38 years. Should it be judged on the track record of the performances of that government? If we look at it that way, there has been failures which have seen our economy go to the lowest point, and ED was part of that, and you have to defend him. How do you defend him? Okay,
I think let's exonerate ED from the rest of his colleagues which he has been in government before. Let's look at ED as a person. Let's look at ED as an individual. What has he done thus far? We see that we now enjoy an assured food security program through the government, the program that was initiated by Emerson Damzo Mnangagwa, that's Commander Agriculture. When ED was Minister of Defense, that's during from 2009 to 2013, we saw the construction of the best defense college in Africa, which was constructed, I think, about 20 kilometers away from where we are. In ED, we see the developments that have happened within the Midlands province. They are almost unheard of. What we see is the recapitalization of David Whitehead, the biggest cloth-making company probably in Southern Africa. We have seen the almost recapitalization of ZICOSU. We have seen the recapitalization of Zim Alloys as well. So these are just some of the things, or a tip of the iceberg, of which the programs that ED has initiated since he was in government. What we saw as well, ED played a very, very, very important role in amalgamation of the ZIPRA, ZANLA, and the Rhodesian forces in 1980, whereby he was Minister of State Security. So these are positives that are coming in from ED. So merely, we really cannot say that ED has been part of a government that has failed. Why? Because if we're going to agree between the three of us, really, or the Zimbabwean nation can agree that Mugabe had run down the economy on an independent level. Why? Because, as you can see, the reason why we had sanctions, it was because of one individual who thought he was supreme over everyone else when it comes to political thought. Secondly, we are in this quagmire. Why? Because Robert Mugabe allowed his wife or his family to interfere in executive functions of government. So these are some of the things that we see from post-2000 up until now. We saw the creation of people like Jonathan Moore, who were totally counter-revolutionary to the agenda of Zimbabweans. We saw the emergence of people like Xavier Kasukwere into government. These are people who have been running government institutions down. Why do I say so? We took Jonathan Moyo into government with the backlog of him being a corrupt official from Ford Foundation, where he defrauded almost $150,000. And he came into government. He did the same thing. Right now he's on the run because he defrauded ZimDef for almost $440,000. So really, it's some of the failures that the government has been facing from 2000 up until now, or up until November rather. It has been an issue of us taking people who were never part of the struggle into government. It was an issue of the Mugabe family interfering in executive functions of the government. It was an issue as well of state-run institutions being the parastatals that were actually not being run efficiently. We saw the issue of ZESA. We saw the issue of ZIMRA, whereby Gershon Pass is being accused of corruption. We saw the issue of even ZimDef as well. So these are things these are parastatals that have been run down. Investor confidence was limited so much from 2000.
But Mavima, you were, as the youths, even in ZICOSU or in ZANU-PF, you had already endorsed former President Mugabe as the candidate for 2018. Okay,
on that, allow me to speak for ZICOSU specifically. When the G40 cabal took power, we de-associated ourselves with ZANU-PF. I will be very confident of that. I'm one person who's on record of denouncing the G40 cabal even during the height of their powers. ZICOSU took such a position through the leadership of Komitende Tondireche, who was later on expelled from ZANU-PF. ZICOSU was never involved in any endorsing of Robert Mugabe as a 2018 candidate. It was ZICOSU who actually initiated certain programs that we saw that the students' community were actually anti-Robert Mugabe. Why? Because we saw that we took a position that was inclined more to the war veteran side, where we're saying, no, ZANU-PF is not losing its way. So what do we do as intellectuals? Intellectuals, we cannot allow this giant institution to lose its way and be part of it. We exonerated ourselves. Our leadership was expelled from the party, and together with the war veterans leadership, and we fought from the corner of the war veterans. We never endorsed Robert Mugabe as a candidate of 2018.
Let me come to Pesanai. Pesanai, the message that is coming from Nelson Wamba Dia Wamba, you want to call him Wamba Dia Wamba,
the Congolese terrorist.
He was an intellectual at Wamba Dia from the DRC. The message that is coming out from his campaigns, is it resonating with you as youths? Yeah, I know they are what they call the Wambologies. Some of the exaggerated promises. Are you buying into his ideas?
Okay,
Probably you wish.
First of all, Nelson Chamisa, he is actually bringing up vibrant policies that resonate with the youth cause, that resonate with the student cause. We can see that Nelson Chamisa has been a proponent of building infrastructure that is modern, that can modernize our country, so that if young people want to venture into entrepreneurship, if they want to venture into anything, they can actually do so with infrastructural development. Let's look at it. ZANU-PF has said that it has been a champion of youth empowerment and youth indigenization, which has been a pure lie, because if we can see that they haven't even empowered the youth, they were doing it for the gerontocracy, for the elderly benefit. We can see that youth, the majority of youth are those that are in the streets vending without any proper infrastructure, vending at Magaba, vending also. But with the Wamba Diawamba, Nelson Chamisa,
so
he's saying
youth
that
will be traveling in bullet trains.
We have to put infrastructure first before we can actually develop and modernize Zimbabwe. And there is this thing that Emerson Mnangagwa is actually improved the country since his ascendancy to power. I disagree. I vehemently disagree with that, because we can see that with the coming in of Mnangagwa, we have seen as the system degenerating. We can see the financial system has degenerated into some the longest bank queues we have ever seen in history. We can see that money is still being sold on the black market, and we can see, look at Mnangagwa. He's saying that Zimbabwe is open for business. How is it open for business when we do not have even that currency, those bonded notes that are bonded to the United States dollars? They are not even enough.
Mavima, because of our time,
we are also saying that he has disassociated himself from the Mugabe dynasty thing. But when Mugabe was organizing interfaces and what sort, ZICOSU was taking part in that.
No.
So how can you disassociate? Maybe it was you in your personal capacity.
No, it was the National SRC. It was the National SRC, yes. Jonathan Moyo project, not ZICOSU. You're lying.
Here we are talking about Wambologies and the promises that have come. I think most people now are watching my rally MDC Alliance kutivanzwe zvinyowa zvine zvapromiswa. I know kuti pane zvimwe zvakawanda zvinotaurwa but zvinozongostika mupfungwa dzevanhu. Hanzi Chamisa makes the youth dream and they see this infrastructure. Imi mayouth hamusi kuzvionawo here kuti you are being given, you are being empowered with dream of.
No, the thing is, I don't think Chamisa is very close to being a dreamer. Chamisa is one man who's suffering from a complete midlife crisis, whereby he hallucinates every time he sees a crowd. Chamisa is one person who Anita anunzi manyawi pachishona yakanaka vanhu vakaungana. He talks of bullet trains really, but if I'm going to take you through the history of bullet trains are a making of the Japanese and the Chinese, whereby their own transport system that they developed, not necessarily for the entire world. So you see, it's only, I think it's probably 5 countries who have adopted bullet trains as a mode of transport. Why? Because they're extremely expensive. We saw the American government abandoning construction of bullet trains because they've been costing 77 billion per year, per annum, really. So what I'm saying is, okay, really, in the economy that Zimbabwe is in, or the position that we're in this quagmire, is really bullet train the priority? Is a village airport the priority? Is rather, I would say, let's come up with initiatives in our agricultural sector. Why do I say so? Because as much as we want to compete in the technology front, we can never outdo China, we can never outdo Japan, we can never do the United States of America. So let's focus on our strengths. What are our strengths as a Zimbabwean economy? Our strengths are in agriculture and mining. Going back, you can actually tell that was, going back even in the time memorial of our ancestors, it was mainly an agriculture and mining economy. So what are we saying? We're saying, let's recapitalize agriculture. Let's make those old farms that were no longer effective. Let's inject capital in our mining industry. Why? Because we have the biggest lithium deposits in the world. We have the biggest deposits of copper and the best quality of copper in the world. We have almost the biggest deposits of gold, and we have the biggest deposits of diamonds. So what do? Let's engage in a process of value addition of those minerals, whereby we're no longer selling them as raw materials, but as processed goods. Also, coming in on the issue of him saying that the liquidity crisis is the product of Emerson Mnangagwa. Really? Emerson Mnangagwa is the perpetrator of...
The product of ZANU-PF.
It's not a product of ZANU-PF. Let me take you back to the unity government. What did we see during the unity government? Tendai Biti promoted a free forex trade zone, whereby anyone could take any amount of foreign currency out of Zimbabwe unaccounted for. So that's why you have people who deposited $9 million into Spanish banks. We have people who deposited $3 million into Chinese banks. Most of these transactions that actually took place during the 2000 and 2013 era. Why? Because we had a free forex trade zone, whereby anyone could take out foreign currency without being accounted for. So what we're seeing now is a string. So this is actually a baby of Tendai Biti, if you actually ask me well. Why? Because it's Tendai Biti who actually came up with these, shrewd policies of them being populist as usual, of them not having the people in mind as usual. He came up with the free forex trade zone, whereby there was nothing limiting forex going out of Zimbabwe. There was nothing limiting even minerals going out of Zimbabwe during that era. So you'd find that the liquidity crisis is not something that just happened overnight, but it's a process that has been degenerating itself from 2009 up until the situation that we are in right now. So how are we going to solve the liquidity crisis? We're going to solve the liquidity crisis not really by adopting the rand. Why? Because for you to adopt the rand, you have to have your own currency that's already functional. So what do we have? We're going to create an environment that's conducive to investment. Because the FDI, it is what brings forex on the table. Tobacco sales bring forex on the table. So what we see is people are not understanding ED. They're saying ED is ineffective. No. ED is building an economy that's sustainable. A sustainable foundation whereby we're all going to enjoy probably in the 6 to 9 months to come from now.
My final question to you before I come to you, because our time is running out, is ED speaking to the youth of Zimbabwe? How do the youth find a message in what he's saying?
The youth, they find the message in what he's saying. Why? Because the youth, especially as the intellectual community, we understand the process of re-engagement and what it means to the Zimbabwean economy. When he speaks of energy development, we understand. When he speaks of infrastructure development, we understand. When he speaks of us moving an agenda of Zimbabwe on a patriotic base, we understand. We equate ED to the days of Deng, when Deng took over from Mao. Why? Because the economy of China found itself on a down railroad and road through the misrule of Mao and, you know, him being captured by his wife and all that. So some of these things we're actually saying, no, intellectuals, they understand where they're coming from. They understand where ED wants to take us. As the youths, it's actually our duty now to pass on the message to the youths who are down there in Binga, to pass on the message to the youths that are down there in Kokwe, down there in Mutoko, down there in Mount Darwin, to say, no, what you guys, don't be so the dummy of generational consensus. There's no generational consensus to talk of. Shamisa is 40, but look at everyone else who's around him. Mudzuri is 65, you have Monzora who's 55, you have Tendai Bitu who's 57, Washming Muro who's 56 as well. So which generational consensus are we talking of? Shamisa as an individual cannot be a generational consensus. So what we don't want is people being given a dummy, or the youths being sold that this idea is theirs. It's not the idea, but it's an idea which is coming from members who formed the MDC in 1999. And you can't tell me that these people, they have a youth agenda, that they want to set out 20 years later. Really, 20 years later, we're waiting for a generational consensus. What for?
Pesana, your final words as you respond and move on.
You bullet train speed, please.
Come on. You were saying that what did ZANU? You were saying that it was Tendai Bitu who created the funds being actually externalized. No, MDC is the party that brought in a new dispensation which was geared at alleviating the financial burdens on the people of Zimbabwe.
MDC brought in a new dispensation.
Yes, MDC brought everybody knows. It's the clear.
No, but Zimbabwean citizens participated.
Brought a new dispensation in 2009. We started using the
US new dollar, dispensation.
And there were policies that were in place that were put.
So 2009 was a new dispensation.
Yes, it was the GNU was a new dispensation because we are saying we are coming out from.
But we saw
violence in 2008.
We saw Tendai Bitu presenting a budget. We saw Tendai Bitu didn't create anything.
It's my time.
Tendai Bitu, what Tendai Bitu did was reproduce.
PF came into power. It destroyed any other legacy that had been.
No, what I'm saying is, if I'm to take you back,
While it was in power, and you are talking about bullet trains, you are saying that bullet trains are only used in 5 countries. Morocco.
Those are high-speed trains. It's totally different from being bullet trains. It was a high-speed train.
They are energy efficient.
That's how naive and myopic MDC people are. They run away from the truth. High-speed train is not a bullet train.
On gerontocracy, because we can see your wing right now is ZANU-PF is headed by one Tukarebi who is 52. His son Gabriel is in there. In the youth league. And we are saying that it's your culture of gerontocracy.
Right.
We are saying
2009.
Who was 62?
2009. Let me take you back to 2009. 2009 in February.
My time, comrade.
2009.
My time, comrade. It's my time, comrade.
That point for a little while. Let Pesanai finish his point.
Yeah, let me finish.
I'll give you a chance to respond.
But what I'm saying is, high-speed trains are not bullet trains.
All right, hold on.
High-speed trains are not bullet trains.
Whatever. What he has only managed to do is to bring in 1960s diesel trains in this country.
Those are not 1960s bullet trains.
We want to modernize. That is
modernization at the expense of what?
At the expense of what? At the expense of what?
You can't tell me that you're building at the expense of agriculture. It doesn't make sense. We're building an African economy for crying out loud.
No,
it's an African economy.
All right.
It's an African economy.
Can you wind up your point?
So then right now he's talking about value addition that he was talking about.
He doesn't speak of value addition. He speaks of ports at Mureba Center. That's not value addition.
It's value addition.
That's not value addition. That's not value addition. Let's speak of value addition in the mineral sector. We're saying let's process our own diamonds. Let's process our own copper. Let's process our own lithium.
We are saying that
building an airport
we can put in airports so that
it's not value addition.
It's value addition.
Building airports is not value addition. You're lying. You're just like
I'm not lying.
Mavima, let's give him a minute to wind up.
Yes.
You've got 60 seconds.
When we put an airport here and we actually carry the produce, and it is value added, it is packaged, so that the farmer there in Murewa can get something that is better, not the things that are existing right now, that farmers go to Mbare and the packaging is not okay. They are sometimes,
Mavima's point was that in terms of priorities, do you think it is a priority?
It's not a priority.
As a youth,
yes.
The airports, the bullet trains.
In an agricultural environment, I think it's a priority, and it is not unprecedented. It has been precedented.
Can I come in? Can I come in on that?
For farmers, they have private jets, whatever, to carry the produce like
can I come in on that?
And everything. In every agricultural environment, it's a necessity, because agricultural products turn bad quickly.
Can I come in on that?
Mavima, last words, because I want to wind up.
Okay,
now.
Thank you. Issue of him claiming that 2009 the multi-current system was a product of the MDC. That's fallacious. That's a lie. Why do I say so? If you remember, before the GNU was signed in February of 2009, Nelson Chamisa Patrick Chinamasa, presented a budget that was that was a multi-currents budget.
So
this multi-currents, the introduction of the USD, it's actually a ZANU-PF initiative, not an MDC initiative.
It's not a ZANU-PF initiative. It was an MDC initiative, because they actually came and they gave the civil service the vouchers and whatever, and the money was there in the economy, not just mere rhetoric like what Emerson Mnangagwa is doing right now.
You know what, Comrade Pesena, if you want to have this interview by yourself, then I think I will not say.
You are actually cutting.
I will not say anything else.
Wind up,
the point I'm trying to put across is there's so much positives that are inclined to the MDC during the GNU. It's a misconception, really.
Yeah,
Why? During the GNU, we never saw opening of industry. What we experienced during GNU was an economic boom that was necessitated by the introduction of the US dollar. If you remember well, prices were so high when the GNU commenced. Why? Because people were more or less of panicking to the use of the US dollar. So what we saw was an economic boom, not economic recovery. Economic recovery is what we're seeing now. When we are laying the foundation, there was never economic recovery from 2000 to 2013. What we saw was a free market economy. A free market economy that. It's the second time. If you want to speak to yourself, I'll keep quiet.
Okay, Mavima, last words as the youths go to vote. What is your message?
Students vote ED. ED as all vote. That's not only my message, it's the message of the masses of Zimbabwe, the majority. We will not listen to little minority groups like ZINASU and their paymasters to think that they can effect any change within Zimbabwe. It's not possible, because the masses of Zimbabwe speak for themselves. The students of Zimbabwe speak for themselves. The students of Zimbabwe will continue to speak in the same voice that they've been speaking of for the past 5 years, and that's electing ZICOSU into the SRC boards. I thank you.
Pesana, your final words as we wind up.
Yeah, NC 2018, generational consensus. We need
generational blending over generational consensus.
Don't let him finish.
Generational blending. You can't you can't exonerate the old people from Zimbabwe, really.
Okay.
If you're saying generational consensus, then yourself you are not allowed to vote for MDC because you're not under the age of 35. If they're saying the only one people who are under the age of 35 to vote for MDC, certainly you're headed for the Waterloo.
Come on.
You're headed for the Waterloo if you want. Chamisa himself will not vote for himself because he's not under the age of 35. Muzuru will not vote for Chamisa because he doesn't fall under that generation. So generational consensus is a policy. It's a policy that's built around overzealous youth. We're pushing generational blending where we're saying experience and capacity should blend together and create a better Zimbabwe for Zimbabweans.
And that is not happening in ZANU-PF, because even the youth say.
But myself, I'm in a leadership position in ZANU-PF. I'm in a leadership position in ZANU-PF and I'm only 24.
You are being led by gerontocracy, yes.
No, but I'm in a leadership position. I'm the political commissar of the district I come from.
On and on. Thank you very much for coming through to the StarFM Late Night Politics. Very exciting ending to this program, which started off slowly, but I can see that the youths are very passionate about participating in the politics of their country, and they have their own strong views, and it is a group to watch out for. You might agree or disagree with where they stand, but at the end of the day, Zimbabwe is a winner because the youths are saying, let us participate, and they are going to participate. I'm very thankful to my guests tonight. I had ZINASU, Secretary for Education and Academic Research, Pesana Innocent Zobwo, as well as Zimbabwe Congress of Students Union, ZICOSU Commander Student Force, Comrade Paul Mavima. Thank you, gentlemen. You made this program exciting, but you started off too slowly and then you picked up at the end. But nonetheless, thank you very much for coming through.
Thank you, Kada.
Good night, and catch me again next Monday for another exciting edition of Late Night Politics. Stay tuned to StarFM. It sounds good all the time.
You've been listening to Late Night Politics on Star FM, taking an in-depth look at the Zimbabwean political scene. Join us again next week, Monday.
From Salisbury to Harare, #freedom.